Greetings friends, as always it's an honor to welcome you back to Rick's Garage. Today I've got a 2011 Ford F150 pickup in the shop. I'm going to be doing the rear brakes. So as you can see friends, I've gone ahead and raised the vehicle and removed the rear wheel. I've been told my videos tend to get a little long, so this is an effort to make it just a bit shorter. You don't really need to see me remove a tire. I think you all know how to do that. Just a quick safety moment. I've got the vehicle supported by a jack, and as you can see I've got a blue jack stand underneath the rear axle. Also, I have a pair of safety glasses available. I'll be wearing those from time to time. And in the front of the vehicle, opposite of the corner I'm working on, I have the wheels chalked. I've got a chalk in the front of the wheel and a chalk in the back of the wheel, which you cannot see. Okay friends, the first thing we're going to do is remove these 13mm caliper bolts. We're going to loosen them both and then we'll take them off after we get them both loosened. The reason for that, if you take this one completely out, when you go to loosen the bottom one, the whole caliper is going to tend to flip. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to loosen them both a little bit and then we'll pull them both out. So loosen the top one. Oh, that came off fairly easy. Alright, we're going to leave that right there. Now we're going to loosen the bottom one. That didn't give us any trouble either. Now with them both loose, hopefully we can just screw them out by hand, and that's exactly what we're doing. And I'm going to pry up the caliper. Seems to be coming off quite nicely. And we're just going to set that up here on a spring for now. Okay, next we're going to unbolt the carrier bracket. Alright, it's a little tighter, but not bad. Now I'm going to loosen the upper one. Okay, these are a little hard to turn by hand, so I'm going to get a little help. Okay, now that I got them loose, I can use my battery operated drive to extend them out. Okay. Alright, this should lift right out of there. Okay, now we don't have a metal on metal situation. The pads look pretty good, but they're both stuck. So this was the issue. The fact that the pads weren't able to float. I'll talk to you more about that in a minute. Okay friends, what I'm doing right now, I want to determine if I need to resurface this rotor. It looks in good shape, it's quite smooth. So my only determining factor will be, is there any runout? So with my dial indicator, we're going to check to see if there's any runout in this rotor. Now to do this, you can't see in the angle I've got, but you've got to have the indicator 1/2 inch in from the outer edge of the rotor. And you're going to turn it 360 degrees. And it should be within 2.5 thousandths total runout. I'm going to turn it 1/4 turn at a time. Now as I'm turning it, you'll see it move out or in one way or the other, but when I release it, it should come back to 0. So we're going to give it our first 1/4 turn. Here's our 1/4 turn, and it came right back to 0. Now we're going to give it our second 1/4 turn. So now we're halfway around. And it's off by about 1/1000. Now we're going to go 3/4 of the way around. And looks like we're off about 2/1000. And then when we come back up top, should return to 0. And it did. Okay, so this rotor has a total run out of exactly 2/1000, well within spec. It just started pouring outside, and I've got the garage doors open, so that's what you're hearing. If you're hearing any background noise, it's heavy, heavy rain we're getting here. That's why I'm working inside today. Usually with a vehicle this big, I'd be working outside. So this rotor is in fine shape. We don't need to remove it. We don't need to turn it. We don't need to replace it. It's perfectly smooth, and it's not running out. So I don't see how we can improve upon this rotor whatsoever. So we're going to leave it right where it is. Now, some of you who are replacing a rotor may have trouble getting it off. I've got a video on how to remove a stuck rotor. I'll post that at the end of this video for those of you that will need to remove the rotor. So what we're going to do next, I've got the hood opened, and as you can see I've removed the cover to the master cylinder. That's because we're going to work on the caliper. We're going to press the piston back in and make a decision whether we want to reuse that or replace it. What I'm doing right now is carefully examining the dust boot on the caliper. The caliper itself is a little rusty, as was the bracket, but the dust boot itself, as I'm looking around at it, seems to be in pretty good shape. So that's the first determining factor, whether we can reuse this caliper or not. The fact that the dust boot is in good shape. Okay friends, I'll try to give you a good view of this. This is a part of a tool kit that I purchased back in the 1970s. It's perfect for pressing in these pistons. It's part of a puller set. I seldom use it as a puller set, but it does work nicely in pressing back in these pistons. So I'm going to put this little adapter on the face of the piston, and I'm going to take my little press back in tool, and I'm going to center that adapter on the piston. Really works nice for this purpose. And actually this looks like it's going to work quite well. Let's see how this goes. Friends, when I sped up the clip, I muted the audio so I wouldn't sound like Alvin the Chipmunk. But what I was saying as I was turning it in was you want it to press back in smoothly and evenly. If you feel it binding or it suddenly gets harder to press in, then you'll have to discard the caliper and get a new one. In this instance, this thing pressed in very nicely, very easily. All right, that's it. That's completely pressed in. That came out great. So we're going to reuse this, and we're going to go ahead and clean up the carrier bracket. Being the do-it-yourself mechanic, the whole purpose is to save money but be safe at the same time. One thing I want to quickly show you, as we're pressing that piston back in, the fluid is returning to the master cylinder. You've got to be careful that you don't overfill the master cylinder. As you can see right now, or maybe you can't see it, but we're right at the maximum max, so we don't have to remove any fluid. But when I go to do the other side, I will have to remove some fluid to make room for the fluid that comes back when I press in the piston. I've got the carrier bracket up on the bench, and we're going to service it. Now, the carrier bracket is the most neglected part of a brake job by the do-it-yourselfer. This is why quite often the brakes wear out prematurely, is because this component has been neglected. Now in this instance, what I see right away is these pads are frozen in place. These pads need to float. As you apply the brakes, they need to engage the rotor, and then they need to release the rotor. Well, they can't do that properly because they're frozen. They're not going to move. So this is going to cause your brakes to wear unevenly. It may cause friction that would cause the rotor to warp. In this case, we know the rotor has not warped yet, so we're thankful for that. And the other thing that's neglected is the glide pins. These need to be able to move so the rotor can float. Now these are in pretty good shape, but we're going to replace the boots and clean out the grease and re-grease them anyway. So the first order of business is to get these pads out of this caliper bracket. So to do this, I've got a hammer, believe it or not. They don't want to budge. There we go. Alright, there. These are really stuck in there. Now you can see the pad was wearing a little unevenly. One abutment clip came out. Let's see if we can get the other one out. Yep. Okay, so what's happened here is all kinds of rust has built up in along these channels here where the abutment clips go in, and those froze the pads in place. So we've got to try to clean all this rust and scale out of here. If you simply take the new abutment clips and force them on here, they're not going to fit properly, and then you're going to wind up forcing your new pads on, and you're going to have the same situation that we just dealt with. So that's the next order of business, is servicing this carrier bracket. So I'm going to pull the glide pins out, and I suspect we can reuse them because they're still well greased. Okay. Alright, now normally I would wire brush and file these, but they're way beyond that. So we're going to have to use a Dremel with a deburring bit to clean these up. Well, if you're hearing a lot of background noise, we've got heavy rain and wind outside. We've got the garage doors open, so not much water is coming in yet. But that's what all that background noise is about. So this is what I'm going to use. I've got a little bearing bit on my Dremel, and we're going to try to clean up this carrier bracket. Earlier in the video I showed you I had safety glasses. Well, I'm going to put them on now. Alright, I'm not going to show you this entire process. I'm going to show you some of it. It'll be kind of long and tedious. I don't need to bore you with the whole thing, but you'll get a gist of what you got to do. The gist of it is you don't want to leave the Dremel lingering in any one spot. You want to keep it moving as you saw me doing. Now let's get the top part of it. See how badly this scale is caked on there. You'd never get it off with a wire brush and a file. So friends, this surface came out pretty good. I'm going to do the rest of it off camera. You get the gist of what I'm trying to accomplish here. Now, I just want to say this, no repair shop in the world is going to go to this extreme to try to salvage this carrier bracket for you. They're not interested in saving you money, they're interested in making money. They're just going to replace this part and charge you for it. However, you, doing the job yourself, your whole purpose is to save money. So you can decide if you want to spend the time salvaging this carrier bracket or do you want to replace it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish cleaning this thing up and then I'll come back when I'm done and I'll make a decision whether I want to reuse it or not. Okay friends, what I'm doing here, I'm just finishing this up with my little key file. It did clean up quite nicely. I'm just smoothing out any high spots that I might have left. But it looks like I can save this caliper bracket. Or as some people call it, a carrier bracket. So we're going to call that done. Now what I'm going to do is put a little Permatex on all these surfaces that I just cleaned up. Now there are those that say do not use Permatex because of the heat generated by the brakes. But if you read the Permatex anti-seize label, it's good to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, let me tell you, if you heat your brakes up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, then you get a lot more trouble than just using Permatex on your brakes. Okay friends, next I'm going to take this little rotary brush and I'm going to clean around this area where the dust boot seals. I want to make sure I get a good seal there. Now, it's very important at this point that you put those safety glasses on, because what will happen is these little bristles on this wire brush will come flying off at you. So it's extremely important to put on your safety glasses. Okay, I'll do the other one off camera, but now the dust boot will have a nice place to seal. Okay, now I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did to the bracket to the glide pins. I'm going to clean up this surface where the dust boot is going to seal. And again, I can't stress enough, make sure you're wearing your safety glasses when you use one of these things. Okay, I'll do the other one off camera. Friends, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll recognize this as a bench just outside my garage. I use it when I need to be in a well-ventilated area. That's the reason I did not continue yesterday, is because I didn't want to be standing out here in the rain cleaning the glide pin bores of this caliper bracket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some brake cleaner and I'm going to fill up these bores with brake cleaner. Okay. Now I'm going to take a soft bristled bottle brush and I'm going to go in there and clean out these bores. This is a nylon brush, so I'm not ruining anything. Okay, I want to dump out this fluid, see how black it is, and we're going to clean it out again. Keep blocking your view. See, that's coming out nice and clear now, so those are nice and clean. Okay, so now I'm going to take something called Sill Glide. This is the Sill Glide. And we're going to put some grease in these bores. Now you're probably going to get too much in there, but that's okay. I'll show you how to deal with that. I'm using a Q-tip to put it in. Okay, now what'll happen is we're going to take one of the glide pins and work it back and forth and force the excess grease out. And I'll show you how to tell when you've got it absolutely perfect. You can hear the air coming out. You can see how the grease wants to suck the pin back in. That's perfect. So now I'm going to do and work the other side exactly the same way. See how the grease is sucking the pin back in? So that's perfect. So now we're going to install our dust boots. So these dust boots are symmetrical. That means they'll go on either way. So we're going to put one dust boot on. They should go on quite easily. Maybe not. There we go. We got that one on. Okay. Now one of the glide pins has a place for a little rubber boot. This is an anti-rattle boot. That's the sole purpose to prevent the caliper from rattling. So we're going to go ahead and install that boot. We can get it over there. Sometimes they're a little bit of a pain to get on there. A lot of people don't bother to replace them, but I always do. Yeah, we got that on there. Now, I don't think it really matters which side this anti-rattle boot goes on, the pin with the anti-rattle boot. But I made a mental note of it when I took it apart, and I didn't mention it to you. But the rattle boot came out of this side here. So we're going to go ahead and put that in. And all you have to do is press it in, and the thing slides right over where it's supposed to be. So now we're going to put the other one in. And we're going to... There. So these are nicely installed. So now we're ready to install the abutment clips. So we're going to go back inside for that. Friends, what you see me doing right now is I'm taking Permatex anti-seize, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm coating this area that I cleaned all that scaly rust off to prevent it from rusting up again. That way your brakes have a chance to move freely for years to come. And it may be several years before these brakes are serviced again. So what I'm going to do right now is install these abutment clips. Now these little wings, if you will, go up the top. And most cars, the wings would go toward the bottom, but in this particular vehicle they go toward the top, so don't get confused about that. So we're going to go ahead and try to pop these on. And they go on quite easily because we took the time to remove all that rust and scale. There we are. They slid right on very nicely. The combination of the lubrication of the Permatex plus the fact that we took the time to clean all that rust and scale. So what I've done here, friends, is I've clamped a piece of wood in my vise. It's just a scrap piece of wood, and it's going to kind of act as the rotor so we can preload this caliper bracket. So I'm going to take the caliper carrier bracket and I'm going to put it on this piece of wood as if it was on the rotor, and we're going to load it up with the pads. But first I'm going to take some brake grease and I'm going to lubricate these abutment clips. I'm going to use the CRC caliper brake grease. Now you don't need to go nuts with this stuff because you don't want to put so much on there that you're going to contaminate the pads. So we just need some to provide a little lubrication here so the pads will easily slide back and forth. Alright, that ought to be plenty. Like I said, we don't want so much that we're going to contaminate the pads. But I'm mainly concentrating on this rail where the pads are going to slide back and forth on. Okay. Up until now, I have not handled the pads. I did not want to contaminate them, so I'm going to thoroughly wash my hands, and then I'm going to put on some nitrate gloves, and we're going to try to install these pads. Okay, we're going to install our first pad. I'm going to slightly lift up on this little wing right here, put that on. And then I'm going to lift up on the other wing and slide that on. And I don't want to touch the front of the pad area, but it slid on quite nicely. And you can see these are going to slide very nicely. So now I'm going to turn this around and we're going to put on the other side. Now I may have touched some of the grease, so I'm going to change these gloves to do the other side. Okay, I've got a new pair of gloves on, so we're going to go ahead and slip this on. Now I'm going to have to grab them by the front, but these gloves are clean. That's one reason why I changed them, to get this side in. So I'm going to lift up that little tab, get that in, and then I'm going to bring the other side around and slide that one on. I'm being very careful not to try to touch that. Okay, and these are on, and they seem to be sliding around quite nicely. I did not touch the brake material. So looks like these are installed, and we can start putting this carrier bracket back on the car. Alright, we're ready to install the carrier bracket. One thing I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to spray a little bit of brake cleaner on this rotor just in case we got any contamination on it. Okay, I hope I don't block your view too much, but we're going to slide this bracket over the rotor. And I'm going to close up these pads on the rotor. And we're going to see if we can line up these holes to get this started. Alright, looks like we got that one started. And let's see if we can get the bottom one started. Looks like that one's going in nicely. Once again, I'll close these pads on the rotor. You can see how nicely these pads slide around. Oops, I just slid that one out. There we go. So these pads slide around quite nicely. So there's no problem with them floating now. Alright, so let's snug this up. Okay. Now I'm sure there's a spec for these. Just put them as tight as you can, you'll be fine. You want to put these about the same tightness you would as a lug nut. Gotta get this turning in the right direction. That's fine like that. That's going nowhere. There, okay. Those are going nowhere. That's plenty tight enough. I'm going to take a little bit of brake grease and just put it on the surfaces that come in contact with the back of the pad. Just a little bit. You don't need to slather it on there. You don't want it to get so much on there that, like I said, you start contaminating everything. So a little bit of this brake grease on the contact surface there, and a little bit of brake grease on these contact surfaces. Like I said, you don't need a lot. Okay. So now we're going to try to slide this caliper back over and tighten that up. You want to get this hose all twisted. The other thing I did off camera is I inspected this hose. This hose looks to be in pretty good shape. That slid over nice and easily. Let me get this one started. So that one's going in. Get the other one started in there. Now these don't have to be so tight. Usually about 30 foot-pounds or so. We're just gonna, over the years I've developed a feel for this stuff. So you want them fairly snug, but you don't want to put them so tight that you strip the bolt. Yeah, that's plenty tight enough. It's going nowhere. See, I hope I got a good camera angle where you're seeing this, but if you don't, it's fairly straightforward. Alright, that's on there. So now, this caliper should slide back and forth, and it does very nicely. And I can see the pads are moving, as they should. So this job is pretty much done. Okay friends, so all that remains to be done is to put the wheel back on. I'm going to do the other side off camera. I don't expect it to be any different than this side. If all goes well over there, this whole job costs us about $65. Now there may be a possibility that you have to replace one of your rotors or have them turned. These rotors are about $100 a piece at AutoZone. To have them turned, it would probably cost you about $20 a piece. There are places that will still turn rotors, machine shops. We were lucky in this instance that we did not have to do anything with this rotor. It was in perfect condition. Hopefully that will be the situation with you, and I'm hoping that that's the situation with the rotor on the other side. But I do have a brake lathe. If I do need to resurface another rotor, I will do it. So that's all I've got, friends. I want to thank you once again for watching Rick's Garage. Before I go, I'm going to post that video that I promised on how to remove a stuck rotor. And I'll post something else to your left that I hope you find of interest. And to your right, as always, will be a picture of my avatar in the form of my very trusty German Shepherd. So by all means, feel free to click on that should you wish to subscribe to my channel. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you all very, very soon.